So I'm Stefano Vaccaro. I'm the managing director of all what is commercial network for Viasat in Europe. So in my role responsibility, there is alongside the terminal development, but most importantly, there's all the ground segment deployment for all the Viasat 3 constellation. So I would give a kind of a general introduction of Viasat and touch a few of the topics. I was scrolling through the questions that were coming in from the audience, and there were some about, can COVID become an upside, or how do we look for this year? And I can give some insight on how we see the things and how COVID has impacted us on the one side, but also helped us on the other side, and how this can help us going forward. So in a nutshell, Viasat is a global telecommunication company that aims to connect everybody all over the world. Clearly, US based, founded in 1986. The three founders are still running the company, and I think that kind of provides a view of how the company can evolve. So 4 billion market cap, constant growth since the last year. I can present some results later on. And most importantly, we're building 3 of the largest satellites ever built with our constellation of Viasat 3. So Viasat is divided in 3 segments. I will start here with the satellite service segment and see all what we're doing here. So the satellite service segment is basically offering fixed broadband to our residential customers, in-flight connectivity for commercial mobility and biz jets, and enterprise and service. So this year has been pretty exciting and stressful at the same time. So for all what is fixed broadband, we have seen an incredible increase on the demand that has kind of, to some extent, compensated for the decrease of in-flight connectivity service offering. So we had, I think, at the starting of COVID, something like almost 1,500 aircraft in service that have dropped. But what we see now is a constant grow in the in-flight connectivity, and we've been able to announce 2 major airlines during this COVID situation, so KLM and Delta. So that's a pretty significant achievement. And on the other hand, all the fixed residential fundamentally have been increasing our revenue and our margins by the fact that we see the average revenue per user increasing with our customer choosing higher end plans. There are a few other things that happened recently. We announced the acquisition of RigNet that will help us in our broadband services, and that's something that will happen, and the acquisition of the KSAT satellite from Eutelsat. So the other important segment that contributes to our growth is our governance system. I think there has been a small impact, mainly due to the slow process of all the administrative aspects on the awards, but fundamentally it's a segment that has been performing pretty well and not too much impacted by COVID. And finally, commercial network. This is the segment that basically develops our satellites, our ground segment, our terminal, and basically accomplishes our vertical integration. So we have some external sales, but we're not predominantly selling through this service. Now, in terms of results, as you can see, this year or the last few quarters, we have been constantly growing with a significant or a slight slowdown in Q1 fiscal year 2021, which is basically March to June fiscal year 2020, when COVID started. So that was when we had to really restructure a bit of our business and make sure that we're focusing on the business that will continue and grow with COVID. So, and the results have been immediate in the next quarter. With this last quarter has been a particularly good one. So in details, what are we doing and why we're doing it? So I think Tom, I'm going to repeat basically what you said before. So there is a problem of matching supply and demand. So if you look at where people live, they live in, so there is 50% of the population living in 1% of the land mass. If you have a satellite or a constellation that spends 1% of the time where the population lives, it's highly ineffective. Now, one way to address that in what we think a much better way is to have, yes, geo satellites that are, what we build are pretty large, or probably the largest geo satellite ever built for broadband telecommunications. That's one feature. So the satellite remains fixed in the sky and can serve a specific geographical area where the demand is. But there is an additional step that we have done is to make our capacity basically flexible, and it can be redirected anywhere into the visible Earth. So, and that allows us to really, of course, start the business where the demand is, low-hanging fruits in the countries where we already have business and so on, but then gradually move the capacity in other areas so that we can test the market there. And if there is a demand and we are successful, we can add more capacity going forward in those specific areas. So the Viasat constellation will have visible Earth coverage, and it would be not only bring a huge amount of capacity in areas where we can, but also help us test out markets with the very minimum risk. So yeah, I think this is the steps we have been taking. So starting from Viasat 1 domestic, Viasat 2 regional, and Viasat 3 we're going to go global. In terms of bandwidth economics, so not only we have been building very large, so larger and larger satellites, but the most important features that we have been bringing in is the bandwidth economics have been going down significantly. So basically, launching a satellite and having a ground segment is costing all the same amount of money. What we've been able to do is really create this huge amount of capacity, and you can see that with respect to the historical satellites, we can have 500 times more capacity and 400 times reduction in capacity cost. So that's key to allow us to go after all kind of different markets that go from very demanding high-end government executive down to residential, and even further test out new business models in regions like Africa or Mexico. So how we have been able to achieve this improvement in the bandwidth economics is fundamentally through our vertical integration. So here is a snapshot of all our systems. So basically what we do is developing every single component of the system and optimize the entire chain so that we can really make trades. You're talking before about the cost of the terminal with respect to certain features. So fundamentally, we can play on all the elements of the network and make sure that if we invest maybe, I don't know, $10 more in our terminal, there is a return over investment over the entire capacity of the satellite. So we can play with all these features to make sure that whatever we build is the most optimized system that we can and generate, and most importantly, the most productive system that we can have. So what does this in practice? So this is an example of what our vertical integration can do. So if you see on the left, this is the telecommunication panel of our Viasat-1 satellite with tubes, waveguides, and all kind of components. And if you see here is the one of the telecommunication module of Viasat-3, where we moved from tubes and waveguides into a solid state payload, and these two elements have the same capacity. Now, our CEO was used to say, we could easily put one of those modules on a LEO. What we think that putting those modules on, or 10 of these modules on a GEO is much more efficient and will provide way more bandwidth economics. So, and this is really what we're doing. So Viasat-3 is a solid state satellite with that can generate a very flexible capacity on the visible Earth. So, and going forward, so this is a kind of view of how the capacity of Viasat satellites came online and what is the impact on our business and revenue. So you can see that every time we launch a satellite, there has been a very significant increase in our revenue, and you can see that up to Viasat-2. Right now we are managing our capacity to get the maximum revenue out of it. But as soon as the Viasat-3 satellite will come online with a very huge increase, the revenue will continue to grow along the same curve. So yeah, I hope this has give a bit of an overview of Viasat and all what we are doing, and how we have managed to go through all these very critical years. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stefano. That was an excellent presentation and a great overview of your company.
Yeah.
I used to joke that Viasat-3 was the juggernaut, the iceberg that was about to hit the geo FSS industry, but then we did not realize all the .coms and billionaires coming with the LEO constellations. So I have a couple of questions for you. Obviously, Viasat-3 is it's an amazing piece of engineering. I think Viasat itself is building its own payload, right?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not, and Boeing is supplying the platform.
Yes.
So that's fantastic. You've stated, and Viasat has publicly stated, that it plans to build 3 Viasat-3 satellites around the globe. The satellites are relatively similar or the same payloads, but the revenue you could generate in terms of income is much higher in North America, in the US, rural areas where there's 10 million people without broadband, versus, for example, in Africa, where the income levels are going to be 1/20th, 1/30th. Affordability will be very, very small. So does Viasat have a different application or strategy to get the same yield per megahertz or megabit or gigabit from Africa or the other emerging markets like Southeast Asia compared to the current business model that you have in North America?
The short answer is yes. So we have already within the Viasat-2 and Viasat-1 different business model in the Americas, where in North America we have clearly a residential and direct-to-market business, while, for example, in Mexico we have Wi-Fi hotspots. So where we are basically using the same residential terminal, deploying it in rural areas, and we have all kind of monetization models that use that. So the result is that the same residential terminal at the end of the day generates more revenue in Mexico than it does in the US with the same bandwidth or similar bandwidth consumption. So clearly every user doesn't have the same access of capacity like it has a residential user, but the model works very well in this rural area. So, and these are the type of strategies we have to be able to go after very, very different markets, North America versus certain rural area in Mexico, or Europe and Africa.
Okay, great, thank you. And due to COVID-19, a lot of people have been working from home. People have been running away from cities, going to rural areas. How's this pandemic affected your consumer business in North America? Have you seen an uptick in demand, increase in revenue? Could you speak a little bit about that, please?
Yes. So clearly there's been an increase in demand, not only in new subscribers, but also in the type of service the subscribers are asking. So this is appears in our results, where the service business has had more margin, more EBITDA this quarter than the quarter before, and at the same time the net adds didn't increase. But we are really managing the capacity to make sure that we serve our customer in the best way, and also allow for commercial mobility aircraft to come online in the next months. So right now it's really managing the capacity to make sure that we can fit all the customers that we have and make sure that we can monetize in the best way what we have.